Can we please stop this? I am having a really hard time seeing the difference between article and advertisement this week. Highguard has to be the biggest cope that I have ever seen. At least the biggest one that I've seen yet. You have players that are dragging the game through the mud, deservedly so. Meanwhile, you have journalists and others that are hand-waving those criticisms, saying that it's all just a hate campaign. It's a culture war. You haven't played the game enough yet. You need to play it longer before you're actually allowed to have a valid opinion. Don't you understand? It's redefining shooters, even though I'm pretty sure we have plenty of definitions for a game like this. The reception for this game is being treated like it's some kind of anomaly. For what feels like the 100th time by now, we have writers and developers that are gaslighting themselves and the developers of this game to believe that none of this is real. I don't understand. What is with this obsession with the players being wrong? Why do you need them to be wrong? They played it, they reviewed it, they didn't like it, they left. That's it. That's end of story. It doesn't go much further than that. Highguard just isn't a good game. I can just say it plainly here. You could make the argument that it has some good ideas, sure, but none of those ideas are actually finished, a lot like the game itself. The game is hammered by performance issues. The guns feel absolutely terrible to use in most cases. The map design is just, how does that even get past even just the concept phases? You're running around in wide open spaces doing absolutely nothing. The game is just so damn boring. A game like this doesn't release this unfinished or in this kind of shape unless the developers are protected and sheltered from real criticism. And none of their ideas have ever been challenged. And a lot like how this game was developed is exactly how this game is now being treated, and it needs to stop. But before that, a word from today's sponsor, These Guns. If there's one thing your boy's been working on, it's hitting the gym. 1 year straight, not a day missed, except for the one time I hurt my back. But the one thing I've been able to get under control is my workout schedule, not so much my diet. Luckily, we have today's sponsor. Eating right is way harder than just showing up at the gym, and that's where Factor's been clutch. These are fresh, never frozen meals, chef-crafted, dietitian approved, and they're ready in literally 2 minutes. No prep, no cleanup, no guesswork if I'm accidentally sabotaging my progress. Most of the meals I grab are 30 grams of protein or more. Some go even higher, which actually matters if you're trying to train and recover. And it's real food. No refined seed oils, no artificial junk. They've already banned over 175 ingredients outright. It just takes the mental load off of eating clean entirely. There are over 100 rotating options every week, including high-protein meals, salads, and even breakfast, and you can pick what fits your goals and just move on with your day. So if you've been trying to get consistent, or you're telling yourself that it's too late, it's not. Head to Factor75.com or click the link in the description below. Use code LEGENDARYFB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for a year. That's code LEGENDARYFB50 at Factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Scan the QR code on screen or hit the link below. New customers only, and it's an easy win if eating right has always been the hardest part. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys, this launch actually did not go the way that I expected. After the backlash coming out of the Game Awards, which was real backlash, people were not vibing with the design, the premise, or how generic the entire thing looked. I genuinely thought that these developers would pivot. Not fix everything, but maybe try to fix something, maybe throw the game into beta, maybe give some more hands-on impressions and get that out there, maybe just test the waters a little bit. Instead, they went silent, and that silence was immediately defended by parts of games media. PC Gamer even ran a piece talking about how harshly Highguard was treated after its reveal, how unfair the mocking was, and who could blame them for staying silent, which, okay, but after that kind of silence, after that kind of reaction, that's not really going to build any confidence, I'm going to tell you that much. After that, more details finally started to leak out, and this is where things get weird. Apparently, Highguard never planned to actually have a release trailer. The original plan was just to shadow drop the game, but after Jeff Keighley had played it, he loved it so much that he basically convinced them to put a trailer together. That's how it ends up in the final slot at the Game Awards, because he just thought it was that special. Now, around that same time, we also started to hear about how Highguard had an event in LA, invite only, content creators, journalists, critics, all flown out to come out and play the game. And almost everyone came back saying the exact same thing. Nothing but praise, which immediately raises a lot of red flags for me, because if you actually look at the people that were invited, it tells a very specific story. It was mostly games journalists, plus a handful of content creators. And the creators that they did bring in were kind of an odd group. I talked to a few of the people that had actually gone to the event, and they all said the exact same thing. They didn't see any of the names that you normally expect to see at one of these underground competitive shooter previews. No big names in FPS, no hard critics, no people that are known for being rough on launches, just mostly evergreen content creators. Safe picks, and if that sounds familiar to you, well, it probably should, because it's the exact kind of tightly controlled preview strategy that we saw with Dragon Age the Veilguard. And with that, if anything, that kind of feels a lot like foreshadowing, not only for how this game was developed, but also for how this game was going to be treated after launch. A couple days later, Highguard would launch to almost 100,000 players, which even surprised me. And now looking back on it, that Game Award slot and even all the backlash that it got, that's probably the only reason that this game even reached that many people, because within only 4 hours, the game had already had its player counts cut in half, and it didn't stop there. It just kept bleeding players until less than 24 hours later, it settled down at about 19,000 players. And now at the same time that was going on, reviews were starting to come in, and they were absolutely tearing this game apart. Now, if you could even get into a game, that was already a win. Players were running into server issues, disconnects, dead lobbies, and teammates that were dropping out 1 minute into the first game. Matches collapsed before they even started. You'd spend more time getting kicked out to the menus than actually playing the game.
This other guy have to stop the shield
Hey
breaker.
guys, I'm sorry. This game is very, very boring. I'm done with it.
Oh, he's gonna leave. All right, our random? Bro played one game and he's out, dude. Yo.
Now that says a lot more than any review can. The most common complaint for this game is just boredom. Empty maps, no NPCs, nothing happening. Players talking about wandering around these massive spaces, looting shallow junk with no pressure and no payoff. Saying shooting feels all right and mounts feel okay, but that's just about where it ends. Other complaints about how visually blurry, cluttered, and hard to read it is, even on the highest settings. Players would go on to talk about how huge maps are built around 3v3, meaning there's long stretches of just running around waiting and hoping that something happens. The game calls itself fast-paced while also doing absolutely nothing. Characters don't stand out, the art has no identity, and the mechanics just don't build any momentum. Now, I think that's pretty cut and dry. Players are finding the game unfinished, underperforming, and completely lacking. A conclusion that anybody could reach within 5 minutes of playing this game, and yet somehow none of that reality ever made it into the media coverage. Instead, games media went straight into defense mode, building a pillow fort around launch day and spending all of their time trying to gaslight and deflect for this game. Guys, nearly every games journalist who attended the preview event came back running glowing coverage. Paul Tossi even pointed this out, noting that while previews aren't scored, the tone was incredibly positive. Headlines like Apex devs' wild new shooter deserves a chance. Highguard stands out with a compelling new mode and snappy gunplay. A fantastic and utterly unique live service shooter. And my personal favorite, Highguard is fine when you don't have the internet in your ear telling you it's nasty. With the first paragraph of that article reading, let's set aside the noxious cloud of internet surrounding Highguard for a second. Ignore those overwhelmingly negative Steam reviews full of folks who have played the game for less than an hour, and pretend that Highguard is just a new free-to-play first-person shooter that came out today. Ah, yes, pretending. That sounds like a great strategy. That's a new one from you guys. Ignore the criticism, dismiss the players, and you know what? While you're at it, why don't you guys tell people how exciting it is to mine rocks in a competitive shooter? This is the narrative that surrounded Highguard the minute that it launched. People coping and convincing themselves that this backlash isn't real, claiming that the negative reviews aren't organic, that it's all just review bombing that's tied to some culture war. Nathan Grayson over at Aftermath even wrote an entire piece arguing that this is just manufactured outrage that's pushed by rage bait farming right-wingers while citing clips from channels that are pulling like 15K views. This is so stupid. What is wrong with you people? And the main piece of evidence that all these guys are using is playtime. Under 10 minutes, under an hour, therefore illegitimate. I saw this narrative getting pushed. I saw somebody talking about how this game is just getting dogged on by bad reviews for no reason and that they're going to play it later for themselves. And I pushed back saying, hasn't played it, but has the stones to call out reviews. Most reviews for the game are fair criticisms about performance, 3v3 game feel, and server times. Even if they weren't, the customer has no obligation to give anything a fair chance, nor should they have to be shamed for their opinion. Now, shortly after, I started getting replies from a former narrative director at Apex Legends, someone who either works with Highguard now or maybe just knows a lot of the people that are working on the team, and he was pushing back on me for saying that a lot of these reviews were fair. He dropped a handful of cherry-picked troll comments and asked if we're really pretending if sub 1 hour reviews are legit. To that, I responded, yet we applaud a 2-hour return window on full-price titles. Get out of here with this gatekeeping bullshit. Nobody needs to eat a whole meal to say it tastes like shit. Now, I'm going to be straight with you guys. I didn't actually read the specific reviews that this guy had posted at first. I didn't realize that he was getting all worked up over these same 2- and 3-word rage bait reviews that you'll see on every single Steam page. All the reviews that I had actually seen, even the ones that were sub 1 hour, were legitimate criticisms. As somebody who has played the game myself, what I felt in the first 10 minutes is the exact way I felt after 10 hours of playing it. Now, after pointing that out and then saying, how am I bad faith when I'm plainly stating that players are allowed to form an opinion regardless of time spent playing, whether it's waiting in the menus, playing one match, or playing 100. If they don't like it, they don't like it. He then goes on to accuse me of being bad faith, saying that I moved the goalpost, to which I replied, say I'm moving the goalpost when you're the one playing goalkeeper. Because just earlier, this guy had tweeted out saying, you need at least 4 to 5 matches of Highguard to get it to click, and if you aren't trying to get it to click, then you're not going to like it. You can jump into any PvP game, put zero thought into the mechanics, die, and say it's bad. This guy essentially is saying if you don't like it, it must be because you just don't want it enough. What the hell is wrong with these people? You do not need 5 matches or 5 hours to have an opinion. Aside from obvious bait, all criticism from a customer is valid regardless of their playtime. Throwing away those criticisms of players who couldn't even stick to the game for an hour is the dumbest thing that you could possibly do. Those are the most important criticisms. Players that quit in under an hour are giving you the most valuable feedback possible because the game has failed to do the one thing it needed to do early on, which is make them want to stay, something that Highguard has failed to do. Garbage one-liner reviews are always going to exist on every single Steam page. And the people that are hyper-fixating on that stuff are either completely mind-controlled by rage bait or they're intentionally using it to be able to deflect criticism. Probably both, most likely at the exact same time. I mean, the overwhelming criticism that's surrounding this game right now is specific, consistent, and most importantly, very easily verifiable. So it doesn't line up with anything with any of these guys are saying right now. Bad actors are always going to exist, but obsessing over them is just an easy way for you to just ignore everybody else. We can all see that. I don't understand why these guys don't get that through their head. I understand wanting to encourage creativity or taking risks or developers doing well and wanting them to make good games and hoping their games do well, but this is a very harsh reality that these guys have to face, and that's that players do not owe any of these games their time. They don't owe it a fair chance. These games owe it to the players to deliver an experience that's worth keeping us around. These are the guys that are asking for our time and money. You have to understand how that equation works. And if you're going to sit around and try to deflect criticism over that, say that that's all fake and make up excuses for why it's not happening, all you're going to do is you're just going to fail over and over again. Every time you try to say the players are the ones that are wrong, you're just going to fail again and again. The most frustrating part about all of this is the writers, the journalists, the developers, and even the so-called players on social media that are saying that, oh, I'm playing the game. No, you're not playing the game. We know you're not playing the game. The same warriors come out all the time. None of these guys share in any of the consequences of this game's failure. But these guys are fully committed to go down with the ship. They have no problem building a hug box around bad decisions, deflecting criticism until the dust settles and there's nothing left to salvage. I think these defensive narratives around video games are like the most toxic thing we have in the games industry. It is so caustic to game development and to the future of a lot of these games because all they're seeing is a bunch of people that are telling them that they are the ones that are right, that it's the players that are wrong. So they see a game like Highguard, they see a game like Veilguard, they see a game like Avowed or a bunch of other ones that didn't do very well, and they say, oh, that was a one-off, that was because of something else. If I just continue down this road, I'm completely fine because everybody is saying that I'm completely in the right, which is just not the case. That should not be the objective of journalism. It should be able to find the truth in the middle. There's always going to be noise, but you have to find the truth in the middle. You need to be making sure that you're not teaching these developers the wrong lessons. That's what I need to say. Because by the time that reality finally cuts through with these guys, it's already going to be too late. And I already know that's the case because I've played Highguard myself. I put the time into it. And after putting any time into this game, you quickly realize why players are not sticking around. And I'm going to be real with you guys. I do not see a path forward. I've put a decent number of hours into Highguard, and I'm just going to say it plainly. It's not good. And yeah, I know that I'm critical of games before they launch, but I always try to give these games a real shot when they're out. I promise you guys that. There just isn't much of a shot to give here. Right now, right out of the gate, the game is a technical mess. It's doing that weird Unreal Engine 5 thing where it's saying that it's running at one resolution, but it clearly isn't. You get fraying edges, shader artifacting, and a smeared look. The thing struggles even on a 4090, and there's barely even anything happening on the screen. Now, even if I stripped away all the performance problems, it's still not fun. Every single gun feels bad to use. You're fighting recoil that makes no sense. The sights feel off. Weapons just don't feel good in your hands. That alone is just wild, considering that this is a team that used to work on Titanfall and Apex Legends, something that these guys wanted to make sure that we knew, but I'm not seeing any of that experience reflected in the gunplay. Outside of the UI and opening loot chests, that pedigree just isn't here. The core loop of the game is pretty simple. You fortify your base, you drop into the map to go gear up, you fight over the shield breaker, and then you move into the raid phase. That turns into this Counter-Strike style objective where you're planting charges on one of 3 points to deal enough damage to be able to win, which sounds fine in practice, but ends up falling apart almost immediately. Base fortification is basically cosmetic. You reinforce a couple of walls and then they get shredded almost immediately because there are items and abilities that are designed specifically to bypass them. There's no depth to it, no creativity. Once a base is breached, both teams basically just sit at choke points until somebody loses. Defensively, you don't really have any meaningful options. Offensively, you don't really have any there either. There's a couple of characters that have abilities like a lightning spear or a summon, but they're just minor annoyances at best. And if you find a dome splitter, which isn't hard to do because you get plenty of time to be able to loot just about everything on the map, well, you can just open up another entrance, and now the entire raid is just a 3v3 brawl. At that point, the whole idea of fortifying, planning, or outplaying anybody just completely disappears because you're trading shots in a system that never supported what it was trying to pretend to be. Then there's the looting and gearing, and guys, this is the most embarrassing part of the game. It feels like I'm playing an open world Assassin's Creed game. I'm just running around aimlessly. There's no clear indicators of where loot is, no competition over it, no pressure at all. It's just minutes straight of you just running around, opening chests and breaking crystals, which, wow, mining rocks in a competitive shooter, incredible stuff. Really, redefining the genre. Eventually, you're going to end up filling your armor and your inventory and all that stuff and all the currency you want to get. And if RNG doesn't give you what you want, well, you can just go buy that stuff from a vendor, which makes the exploration entirely useless. Who thought this was a good idea? It is so painfully boring and insanely repetitive. With how this game is structured, you don't even see other players unless you're at the shield breaker or during a raid event, which means the majority of the match, most of the time actually playing the game, is spent doing absolutely nothing. And thanks to the vendor system, you're going to end up running the exact same loadout every single match, so every single match is just going to feel the same and play the same. There's just no adaptation, no improvisation, no surprises or anything like that. Every single round feels identical. This whole game just feels like a Frankenstein mess of ideas from other shooters all stitched together. You can feel bits of Apex and Counter-Strike and Valorant, but none of it is actually being pushed far enough to be able to matter, and none of it comes together in a way that is meaningful or coherent or interesting on its own. The 3v3 on maps this big just makes no sense. Players barely see each other, and there's no reason to engage outside of objectives. Even if these guys bumped up the player count, it wouldn't fix the issue because of how these maps are actually laid out. Everything is split cleanly down the middle, so more players would just mean that you're competing with your own teammates for loot rather than anybody else. This game has to rethink its formula almost entirely. I don't think that the base idea is necessarily bad. It's just undercooked across the board. Maps need to be smaller and redesigned. Player counts definitely need to go up. And instead of everybody wandering around aimlessly until the shield breaker spawns, the map should be forcing conflict the whole time. Secondary objectives, contested gear, high tier loot, bonuses that actually matter. Because as it stands right now, you spend half the match running around through empty spaces waiting for the game to finally start. Base attack and defense also need the same treatment. I don't mind the Counter-Strike style raid phase. I actually think that's kind of cool and a little bit fun when it actually works, but there's zero room for creativity right now. Defending is just standing at a choke point. Attacking is just trying to brute force your way in. They need to have real choices, ways to upgrade your base, meaningful defenses, multiple attack paths, maybe even some upgrades for the shield breaker itself, or some alternative uses for the tower that just sits there doing nothing other than acting as a shop for some odd reason. I'm not pretending that I have like the perfect solution here. I'm not a game designer. I'm never going to actually try to pretend to be, but it's obvious that there's something fundamentally wrong here, and pretending that it's not isn't going to be helping anybody. Instead of being a new breed of shooter, this is a game where you spend more time riding a horse than actually shooting a gun. Players should be fighting constantly, and somehow that basic idea never made it into this game's design. How do you miss something like that? How do you miss that in testing? Oh, that's right. You didn't test it. You planned to shadow drop the game without any real feedback. And the feedback that you did get came from a tightly controlled preview event where journalists lined up to give you the Glork 3000, praising you for how brave you are for shipping a live service game in 2026 with investor money behind it. Now, while I'm sitting here giving feedback that I know could have easily landed before this game's launched and probably helped this game in some way, I think that any of the feedback around this game or any of the criticism around this game would help. I don't think any of that actually matters. And that's not because the feedback is wrong. It's because I don't believe these guys are ever going to hear it. One, these are the same developers who openly said in their own marketing that they know live service fatigue exists and also yet decided to make a live service shooter anyway.
We knew when we started we wanted to make a shooter, and we knew we wanted to make something that was live service. And so we've been planning for that for a very long time. In fact, we already have a year's worth of post-launch content already deep in development.
There's a lot of live service fatigue right now, right? These games tend to hit you with a FOMO, which I think players have gotten wise to, for good reason.
And two, I think that these guys blew their window the moment that they chose to make a live service game. I saw Sven Vinka was recently talking about how he doesn't like seeing people tearing others down for something that they created, how putting something out there in the world deserves respect even if you don't like it. And I've seen other people that are echoing that same sentiment. If a game isn't for you, just walk away. And I get where that's coming from, but I don't agree with it anymore. From where I'm standing, the games industry does not need any more politeness right now. It needs bluntness. It needs people that are willing to stand there and call things out for what they are. Because the reality is that Highguard is almost certainly not coming back from this. It's not a beloved IP. It's not a long-awaited release. It's not a comeback story waiting to happen like Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky. It's just another live service shooter. That is a choice that these guys made. They knew that there was fatigue. They knew there was a lot of competition. And in the time it's going to take for these guys to meaningfully fix anything, more games will have launched, more live service titles will flood the market, and more players will move on. They already have. Missing the landing here didn't just hurt, it sealed their outcome. I have a massive amount of respect for Sven Vinka, and honestly a lot of other people in the games industry, but this idea that we need to respect something just because it was created does not sit with me. I'm sorry, that's just not something that I can support. I fully understand where he's coming from. I understand the vulnerability of putting something out there, of creating something with yourself, by yourself or with a team or something like that, and not knowing how people are going to respond. The pride in creating something of your own. I do that with every single video, but whether criticism is worded positively or harshly, all criticism still needs to be respected. And it is up to the industry itself to pull the signal from the noise, not the players. They have to understand that. I've seen this other narrative that is spun up around Highguard as well, which is the idea of what happened to just, if you don't like it, just uninstall it and walk away. No, that's just not how games get better. That's not how anything gets better. That's not how any of these games can actually improve. They have to implement criticism and feedback from all corners of the video game playerdom to be able to make these games actually work. That's how you understand the perspective of the players. That's how you understand what these guys are looking for. And the more that you just surround yourself with yes men, people that are there to tell you everything that you want to hear and tell you that you're doing a great job while you're watching your numbers fall, well, the more detached from reality you're going to become and the more likely you are to fail. For games journalists, them doing this stuff, this is exactly why these guys are losing relevance. They can't help but insert themselves into something that they just don't belong in. You're not a part of this conversation. This is between the players and the game itself. You need to be just looking at the feedback, maybe dissecting some of the feedback and looking at some of that stuff. But outside of that, this idea that they need to just run out and start protecting these games, every single time it turns you into the opposition of the people that are supposed to be your audience. That is not a winning business strategy. I'm going to tell you that right now. That's why people have moved on to watching YouTubers or TikTokers, content creators in general, Twitch streamers or whatever else. And it's because it's pretty easy to tell when those people are saying it how it is or just being themselves. You can't really tell that with a lot of these journalists. I don't see a way out for Highguard. I genuinely don't. The reason why is because the game just doesn't have enough of a audience, an organic audience to actually support it if the game goes and does something or changes something. Well, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be sitting around waiting to hear what these guys have next. I don't think that those same players are going to be showing up. And I think that that's pretty indicative of the situation that we're seeing unfold with the game's player counts right now. While you'll have a lot of people that are on social media right now getting tons of updates for saying, guys, stop hating the game, those same people are not playing the game. So their feedback doesn't matter. At least not in this case. I mean, these guys chose to put their game into a genre that they themselves recognized and said has a lot of fatigue and that players have basically checked out of, or at least have figured out what these guys are trying to do. I mean, what are these guys expecting? Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did enjoy the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video on social media, share it with your friends. Why don't you guys come and join our community Discord? It's a group of great people and great conversations. Follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. Peace.
Family, family, family.